Hello, I'm Peter Chandonnet, and I'm the Environmental Compliance and Safety Manager for the Africa Indoor Residual Spray Program, which is funded by PMI. And we're introducing the mobile soak pit filter, and we're going to produce a training video for you to use in the construction of these filters. We're going to be taking you through all the steps of building the mobile soak pit, and this should help you with your training of trainers and help you with the proper construction of the mobile soak pit. Building your mobile soak pits during the trainer of trainers so that all of your district coordinators and your sector managers understand the fine points of this. If the mobile soak pit is not constructed properly, it will not work properly. So attention to detail is critical. So first I want to go through the materials that you're going to use while you're building the mobile soak pit. First, we have a 20-liter bucket. These are generally available in all countries in Africa. They may look a little bit different than this, but it's important that it is a 20-liter bucket and is approximately these dimensions. This bucket is 35 centimeters tall and it's about 25 centimeters in diameter. The second material that we use is mattress foam. What I have here is a contoured foam, which works better than a flat foam, but I'm starting to understand that you can't get this in all countries. So you can either use the contoured foam or a flat foam. This is what it looks like when we've cut it into sections. And this is how it comes. This is just a bed mattress foam, which you can find pretty much all over Africa. Okay. So the third material that we use are nylon screens. In a hardware store, you can go and find a roll of nylon screening material. These are actually cut out from the screen. I don't have the roll here, but again, a very common material. One of the points, or one of the goals in developing the construction of this filter was to have materials that are generally available in all of the countries in which we work. The fourth item is granulated activated charcoal, and this is the one item that is not generally available in Africa, although we are still finding sources for it. This is what it looks like. From now on, I'm going to be calling it GAC because it's just too long to say granulated activated charcoal every time. The last material that you'll need will be about 15 liters of water, and I'll explain why you need that later on. So those are the materials that actually go into the construction. There are also tools that you're going to need to be able to construct this properly. So there are just a few tools that you'll need. The first of them would be a pair of large, sharp scissors. You're going to have to cut both the screening material and the foam material. And the foam material can be somewhat tricky to cut, but it needs to be cut very precisely. So a good pair of strong, sharp scissors. The second tool that you'll need will be a drill, preferably a battery-operated drill, but a corded drill can work as well, as long as you have access to electricity in your training facility. Along with the drill, you need bits to drill holes. The bits can be 5 to 6 millimeters in diameter, and you should have a couple of them on hand. You'll also need a black marker pen so that you can mark out both the screening and the bed foam material. A stool or a stand on which to put the bucket when you drill the holes. A dust mask so that you're not breathing the GAC dust. And gloves to protect your hands from the GAC as well. And then just simply a stick to stir the granulated activated charcoal. Okay? The granulated activated charcoal, also known as GAC, as I said, needs to be washed and degassed prior to addition to the mobile soak pit filter. There are carbon fines in the GAC that need to be removed, and there's also a great deal of gas that's trapped in the GAC. The gas needs to be removed from the GAC so that we don't get channeling or bypass of the filter. So now channeling is caused when we have channels that run through the charcoal and it's because the charcoal is not settled properly. And bypass is when the water runs through the filter without the appropriate contact with the GAC. It's very important for the water to have the maximum amount of contact time with the GAC in order for it to remove all of the pesticide. So the process of degassing we will go through. You will take 6 to 7 kilograms of GAC and put it in a container. It may be convenient for you to use another bucket besides this. Here's the GAC that we'll be using, and this is about the right amount, the 6 to 7 kilograms. So if you're constructing a number of mobile soak pit filters, you'll probably have a number of these white buckets on hand, and these will serve very well for degassing the GAC. I don't have a number of them on hand, and I'm an environmental engineer, so I have a recycle bucket that I'm using to degas my GAC. I'm not actually going to go through the process because I would need a wet area to be able to do it, but I'm going to describe how you do it. First, you put the 6 to 7 kilograms of GAC inside the bucket that you're using. Then you pour water into the GAC while wearing a dust mask and the gloves that we mentioned previously. When you start pouring water into the GAC, it's going to start foaming and bubbling fairly vigorously. This is a result of the gas coming out of the GAC, and it's an example of why we're doing this process, because if it happens within the filter, it will cause problems with the layering and the settling of the material. So once you have the bucket full and you have 4 to 5 inches or 10 to 15 centimeters of water on top of the surface of the GAC, you need to take the stick and stir it very, very carefully and thoroughly so that you have contact between the water and the GAC to make sure that all of the air comes out of it. So stir it very well, and then you can just put it aside and let it rest for 1 to 2 hours. So you may want to start this process at the beginning of your TOT, and then by the time you're ready to actually start construction, the GAC will be ready to go. So now here we are back after 1 to 2 hours, and your GAC has been soaking for that 1 to 2 hours. And now we need to do what's called decanting, which is to pour off the liquid on top of the carbon without pouring the carbon out itself. This is fairly easy because the carbon is heavy enough to stay in the bottom of the bucket. This process will remove the fines, as I mentioned, and so it needs to be done in an area that can accept the fines. You can either do it outside where you have drainage, or you can do it in a sink. The carbon fines will not bother a plumbing system because the iron will be just swept along. You may find it necessary to wash the carbon more than once. If it looks like there's still a lot of carbon fines within the GAC, you can refill the bucket, stir it, and go through the process again. But you do need to make sure that you allow time for settling before you, again, decant the carbon. Through the layers so that you understand how the filter is built sequentially. So as I said, you have the 20 to 25 liter bucket for the mobile soak pit filter container, which is about 35 centimeters tall and about 25 centimeters in diameter. You have nylon screen in the bottom of the bucket, then 5 to 7 centimeters of mattress foam that's cut to size, as we'll go through. Then another nylon screen cut to size, then 6 kilograms of GAC, and the GAC may vary depending on the size of the container you have, but as a general rule, you want 50% of the height of the bucket to be taken up with the GAC. On top of the GAC, you will have another screen, and on top of the screen, you'll have 2 layers of mattress foam cut to size. And we'll go through each of these steps very carefully, but that's the essence of the filter. So now we have this bucket, and we need to provide some drainage at the bottom of it, because it is a filter, so water is coming in the top and going out the bottom. It's important to make sure that you drill these holes carefully. Some of the materials that I've seen in Africa, the buckets are not as thick as we'd like, and if you don't drill carefully, there's a possibility of them cracking, and that will make the bucket unusable. So if you do have a crack in your bucket, please make sure you do not use it. You need to throw it away. To help prevent cracking, you can use something to support the bottom of the filter while you drill the holes. I don't have exactly what I need here, but as an example, we could use a stool that was a little bit smaller than the bucket and place the bucket over the stool. This will support the bottom of the bucket while you drill, so you make sure that while pressing down, you're not actually distorting the bucket far enough for it to crack. Okay? Okay, now the number of holes and the size of the holes is very important because it's the principal way of controlling the flow through the filter. As I said, the contact time between the water and the carbon is very important so that there's time for the pesticides to be removed from the water. The faster it flows through the filter, the less contact time there is. The slower it flows through, the more contact time there is. So in experimentation, I found that 6 holes, 5 to 6 millimeters in diameter, provide about the right flow rate that we're looking for. Again, it's important to make sure you get the proper distribution of these holes so that you have distribution of the water across the entire surface area of the carbon. So this is the configuration of the holes. It basically looks like a cross with 4 holes on the halfway out from the center to the edge of the container and 2 holes in the center. This will basically give you the best configuration of flow across the filter. While we have the bucket in hand, please note that the top of the bucket is going to be slightly larger than the bottom of the bucket. This is going to be important when we start cutting the materials because it's very important for the materials to fit exactly right into the filter. Okay? So what you want to do is to use the bucket bottom to trace circles to the nylon screening material. And you'll just have a sheet of nylon screens set out here. Place the bucket like this. Take your magic marker and mark around the outside of the bucket. Once you've done the 2 circles of that size, you want to turn the bucket over and do 1 circle of a larger size on the outside. So trace around the top of the bucket just as you did before, and then carefully cut out these screens from the screening material. So you'll end up with 3 screens. I have 2 here, but you'll want to have 3. Approximately circular. Although it's not quite as important to get the screens as accurate as the foam, you still want to do it as accurately as you can. So you have 2 screens that are smaller and 1 screen that is larger. The next step is to cut the foam circles out, and you'll spread out the bedding foam, and again you'll use the bottom of the bucket on top of the foam and trace a circle on the foam so that you can cut out a circle that's just slightly larger than the inside of the bottom of the bucket. I've already cut these materials. This is not an easy process, as I've mentioned. It's very important to make sure that you cut these perpendicular to the surface of the foam so that you don't have an angle either this way or this way, to make sure that you don't have any gaps. You can see that I can see the whole line of the marker that I traced out. You want to make sure that you do not cut inside the tracing because you will end up with gaps. So there's 2 problems. One can be the foam is too small and you'll have a channel through which the water can run and you will not get the flow rate or the distribution that you're looking for. The other problem is if the foam is too big, then you're going to cause buckling of the foam as you put it inside the filter. And again, you won't get the proper flow distribution. As you go through this and you practice, you'll see in more detail what this is all about. but I want to emphasize that it's very important that you have no gaps. So you should cut, if anything, a little bit larger, but never cut smaller, never cut inside the circle that you have traced. Okay? So you see here I have 3 circles. 2 of them are larger than the other. The 2 large ones are cut again by using the top of the bucket to trace, marking the circle, and then very carefully cutting around to get the 2 top filters. So now you can take the smallest screen that you've cut and put it in the bottom of the bucket. Such as this. Make sure it's centered in the bottom of the bucket and so that there aren't any gaps. I only have 2 screens here, so I'm not going to use that for this particular purpose, and I'll explain why in a minute. But after you've placed the screen in the bottom of the bucket, now you want to place your foam on top of that screen. Now if you've been able to find this type of contoured foam, you want to put this facing down inside the bucket. If you have flat foam, then it doesn't matter, you can put either side down. But before you do anything with the foam, you need to make sure that you rinse all of them out and squeeze them several times to remove any residual chemicals that are left in the manufacturing process. This helps the water absorb into the foam better. So take all of your foam circles that you've cut and rinse them out and squeeze them out several times. The final time you don't have to squeeze it out very well. It can be wet when you put it in the filter. So assuming we have a screen in the bottom, now I'm going to place the surface, the contoured surface, down at the bottom with the flat surface at the top. I'm going to place this in as carefully as possible so that it's even all the way around and so that there are no gaps. So now you can see that I've placed this carefully in the bottom, that it's distributed evenly across the bottom. You can still see the black marker, so we know that the filter is actually larger, the foam is larger than the bucket, and we will not have any channeling or bypass. So the screen at the bottom of the bucket provides some support for the bottom of the bucket. If the bucket is not as strong as we would like, then the screen can support some of the weight. My bucket is strong enough, so I'm not really using it. The screens are very important when it comes to the granulated activated charcoal because it helps you to keep them separated, it helps to keep the foam clean, and it makes it much easier to change the GAC if you should have to do that mid-season or at the beginning of a new season. So I carefully put the screen inside the bucket, centered again. This is not, again, as critical as the foam, but we should cut it as closely as possible to the size we're looking for. So here you see the screen placed at the bottom of the bucket on top of the first layer of foam. So the next operation must be done outside or in a sink because you're going to need a place where water can drain. You have your activated charcoal that has been sitting and wetted. And now it's time to transfer the GAC into the bucket. The water that's on top of the GAC is going to help you pour it. And if you need to, during the course of adding it, you can add more water to it to make the GAC flow better. So this simulation isn't exact because I'm not using wet charcoal, but I'm just going to show you that I'm going to pour this in slowly and carefully. It's okay if the water gets into the bucket, and you should pause every once in a while and just rock the bucket back and forth a couple of times. This is to make sure that the GAC is a level surface and that it's settled in as much as possible. So again, we don't get any channeling or air pockets within the GAC. So a couple of times during the filling, just stop and shake. So now we can see the GAC inside the bucket. You can see the level that it's been filled to, and you can see that we have a level surface across the top. Now we take the larger of the screens that we've cut and we place it on top of the carbon. So this contains the carbon within the two screens. So again, it's very easy to change if you should need to change it. Okay, so now we're going to take the two larger circles of foam that we've cut and put them in the top of the bucket. If you've been able to find and purchase the contoured foam, you want to place them back to back like this. So they go in the bucket like this, and you'll have the contoured side facing the GAC, and you also have the contoured side facing up in the bucket. I'm going to place them in separately though, because it's easier to put them in carefully and to get the distribution and it fitted to the bucket better. So again, I'm being very careful to avoid any channels on the outside of the bucket and to avoid any creasing that will cause problems with the flow. I'm going to take the second filter, put it on top of the first, and there we go. So now the function of these foam mattresses or filters, circles that you've cut out of the mattress foam, is to act as a filter. One of the problems that we ran into in the first pilot test was that when operators come back from the field and they want to wash their PPE, their personal protective equipment, that being their helmet, their face shield, their gloves, and their boots, quite often there's a lot of mud on their boots. And the mud, if it washes into the mobile soak pit, will interfere with the action of the GAC. For this reason, we have decided to put in a boot wash before you enter into the mobile soak pit area, so the operators should step into the boot wash and wash the mud off of their boots. Even still, we're going to get mud that gets washed into the mobile soak pit. The reason that we have two filters at the top are so that we can filter out any mud that is tracked into the mobile soak pit area from the operator's boots. This has proven to be a problem in Madagascar, and so we redesigned the filter to assist in that process. So if you do get an excess of mud built up on top of this top foam, then you want to pour clean water over it to flush any pesticide out. And once you have done that, you still want to wear gloves, but you can just remove the top filter without disturbing any of the layers underneath. And you can take this to a faucet or a hose and wash it out, rinse all the mud off of it, squeeze it out, and then put it back in. Okay? Once you have put the foam in, you put the top on the bucket, and you're done. This is your mobile soak pit filter. Thank you.